The air is heavy with the scent of wet earth. Rain falls over a world unrecognizable to us, a land of giants, where the thunder of hooves and the growl of predators rule the silence between storms. The ground trembles beneath the march of life and death. Amid this chaos, something fragile moves, a shape, upright, uncertain, human, yet not. Its hands are empty, its body exposed to the wind and the hunger of beasts. No weapons, no fire, no language, only fear and the will to endure. Each heartbeat is a question of survival, each dawn, a victory written in mud and blood. This is not civilization, it is before civilization. A time when humans were barely human, when instinct was our only tool and survival our only dream. This is life 2.7 million years ago, and the story of how our ancestors found food without tools and against all odds began the long journey to becoming us. The earth then was wild, violent, and merciless, a planet still forming its rhythm, torn between creation and destruction. Volcanoes split the horizon with rivers of fire, monsoons carved valleys and drowned plains. Forests stretched endlessly, alive with movement, predators in the shadows, prey trembling beneath the canopy. The sun was not warmth, but warning. When it fell, the world belonged to the hunters, saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, monstrous crocodiles. The night was alive with sound, the cries of creatures fighting to exist, the desperate breath of the hunted. In this untamed land, early hominins, perhaps Australopithecus afarensis, perhaps Paranthropus, wandered the edges of survival. They were neither beasts nor men. They stood upright, saw further, thought deeper. But in this age, those gifts were fragile. Intelligence could not yet cut, could not yet kill. Their hands, capable of so much, still grasped at roots and bones, powerless against the might of nature. They had no tools, no fire, no weapons, but they had hunger. Hunger, that relentless force that drives evolution itself. And so, they learned to search. They followed vultures in the sky, circling above death. They tracked lions from a distance, waiting for the predators to feed, then risked everything to scavenge what was left behind. With trembling hands, they tore at bones, scraping marrow with their teeth, tasting life through decay. It was dangerous, brutally so. Every carcass was a battlefield, a moment too late, and death waited in the grass. Yet this was survival, the raw exchange of courage and desperation that defined early humanity. They watched, they learned. They began to understand the rhythms of the savannah, when the beasts hunted, when the rains fell, where the fruit ripened. The earth became a map of instinct, and instinct became their greatest weapon. Before the first stone tool was ever struck, survival was built on observation. Before intelligence became invention, it was patience. Our ancestors learned by watching the predators that hunted them, by mimicking the balance of nature itself. A lion's kill was not just food, it was opportunity. A stream bed drying in the sun was not just water, it was warning. They began to remember, to think beyond the moment, to plan. A new kind of life was taking shape, not the strongest, not the fastest, but the most aware. Every sensation mattered. The sound of rustling grass could mean food or death. The smell of rot could lead to a carcass or a trap. The flicker of shadow could be the end or a chance to run. In this crucible of fear, the first sparks of intelligence began to glow, faint but unextinguishable. They moved in small groups, families bound not by strength, but by trust. The unity of the tribe was their greatest shield. One watched while others foraged. One cried out, and the group scattered like birds. In their eyes, we see the first flicker of empathy, the birth of connection beyond instinct. Together, they searched for food, Roots, berries, insects, small animals. They learned to dig with sticks, to crack nuts with stones not yet shaped by intent, but by chance. Their world was a laboratory of survival. Every discovery mattered. Every mistake taught a lesson that would echo for generations. When one fell to a predator, the others remembered. When one found a safe place to drink, the memory passed like a whisper, the first thread in the tapestry of culture. But life was relentless. Predators ruled not just the land, but the night. Imagine the sound, the roar of a saber-toothed cat cutting through the darkness, the rumble of a giant hyena scavenging through bones, the air thick with the stench of blood and rain. For these early humans, fear was constant, but fear was also fuel. It sharpened their senses. It forced them to think. Every moment of terror taught them what not to do, where not to go, how to listen. From fear came awareness. From awareness came adaptation. They learned the language of the wild, not through words, but through survival. The art of finding food without tools was brutal, but ingenious. They followed migrating herds, not as hunters, but as shadows. When predators finished feeding, humans approached, cautiously, reverently, using stones to break open bones for marrow, scavenging scraps others ignored. It was in these acts of desperation that our ancestors found nourishment, and perhaps understanding. By surviving on the margins of death, they learned to outlast stronger creatures. They became opportunists, creatures of patience and persistence. Even without tools, they used what nature gave: sharp rocks, fallen branches, river stones, bones of the dead, not yet crafted, but chosen, not yet designed, but used. Each act of survival was an echo of innovation yet to come. In time, their behavior began to change. They began to cooperate, not just to eat, but to protect, to share, to plan. The hunt was still far beyond their reach, but the idea of teamwork was born. A group could watch the scavengers, scare off hyenas, and share the spoils. A group could search wider, remember more, think further. This was not civilization. It was its heartbeat, the earliest foundation of what would someday become community, empathy, and wisdom. And as they grew together, they began to look beyond mere survival. They began to notice the curve of a stone, the pattern of migration, the change of seasons. They began to imagine cause and effect, the idea that one action could shape the next. This was not the invention of tools. It was the invention of thought. The world around them was changing too. Climate shifts brought droughts and floods. Grasslands expanded. Forests receded. Food became scarce. Danger multiplied. And yet, through hardship, they adapted. Their diet evolved. They ate roots, eggs, fruits, carcasses. They dug deeper, traveled farther, remembered longer. Their bodies grew stronger, their minds sharper. This was evolution in motion, not in a laboratory, but in the blood and bone of the living. In this chaos, survival was not guaranteed, but with every challenge, they became something new. The helpless creature that once scavenged the remains of beasts was beginning to think like a predator. The hands that once tore at flesh with nails would one day strike stone against stone. The eyes that once feared the dark would one day control fire. But here, 2.7 million years ago, that future was still a dream. Night falls. The tribe gathers in the safety of trees or shallow caves. The air cools, filled with the hum of insects and the distant roar of predators. They huddle close, not for warmth, but for safety. The young sleep pressed against the old. The old watch the horizon, remembering where death had come before. The stars, bright and alien, burn above them. They do not yet know their meaning, but they feel their presence, a silent comfort in the endless dark. This was humanity's first understanding of belonging, not to a land, not to a tribe, but to existence itself. They were part of the world now, not its rulers, but its survivors. And then one day, a moment, perhaps by chance, perhaps by instinct, a rock strikes another. A spark leaps into the air. For the first time, a creature that feared the dark makes light. The fire that will one day warm cities and forge empires begins here, in the trembling hands of a hungry hominin 2.7 million years ago. But even before that flame, humanity's story had already begun. In the endurance of those who had nothing, yet survived everything. They found food without tools, safety without fire, strength without power. And in doing so, they became the foundation upon which all of human history would stand. Closing reflection. When we look back at these ancient beings, frail, frightened, and fierce, we see not creatures of the past, but reflections of ourselves. The same hunger that drove them drives us. The same fear that haunted their nights still whispers in ours. The same will to endure still burns in every human heart. They were the ones who lived before tools, before language, before certainty. And yet, they were the first to dream, the first to imagine that life could be more than survival. Their world is gone, swallowed by time, but their spirit endures. In every act of courage, in every spark of creation, in every struggle against the impossible, we carry their memory. Because before we were builders, thinkers, and dreamers, we were survivors. And it was there, 2.7 million years ago, in a world without tools or fire, that the true story of humanity began.